Hey, my name is Stephen Bonnell. Online, I'm known as Destiny. Today, I'm surrounded by 20 Trump supporters.
Yeah, as you heard, that Dill Weed's name is Destiny. He's like a lot of those other lefties that just push bullshit out in debates, pushing the media talking points that we've all heard about the 2020 election. But let's get into this. So go watch this loser debate Trump supporters.
My first claim is that Donald Trump is unfit to be the U.S. president.
All right, so you say that President Trump is unfit to take the presidency. Why is that?
I would say that one of the most important values that we have as Americans is our form of government and things like respecting the peaceful transfer of power. I think that being able to concede when you've lost an election is really important. So I would argue that the events that took place leading up to and on January 6th are in and of themselves, among a whole bunch of other actions, immediately disqualifying for the office of presidency.
Oh yes, this Fedrection, that's what we call it. You see, because it wasn't an insurrection. In order for there to be an insurrection, you have to have an armed army with a plan. That's what these dillweeds never seem to get in their head. Just because they go out there in the media and the Democrats keep pumping it into people's minds that it was an insurrection, doesn't make it an insurrection. All the media is an extension of the Democrat Party. So they'll lie, they'll plot together.
I think that Donald Trump was unwilling to accept the results of the elections. I think that he fabricated slates of electors in order to have his vice president pick him to be the winner, even though he didn't have the votes or the evidence to support it. I think that is a wholly undemocratic thing. I think that it is destructive and undermines our democratic process of governance.
No, he's wrong. Everything Trump did was literally by the Constitution. Once and for all, let's get this settled. You see, while the Democrats and the corrupt media were in charge of everything, they can get away with hiding the truth. They can get away with lying to the people. They controlled what people saw and what people heard. As a matter of fact, anybody that opposed the narrative of the Democrats or the people on the left, they were censored off social media platforms. So if your guy truly won the election, why are you removing people off social media platforms? Why are you censoring and removing posts with proof of the election fraud? I don't understand why people never thought about those types of things. I mean, that's just common sense. If you have a real winner, then the winner should have no problems with saying, hey, let's go ahead and do an audit of all the ballots. Let's go ahead and take a look at it, make sure everything is legit. That's not what they did. They rushed through everything. They wanted Trump out of there. They wanted him out right away. And as for there's no proof, that's all bullshit. And to give you an example of the media's bullshit, you can see that back at it again. Take a look at this. So this is supposed to be a bad thing. 24% of the people don't agree with Musk and Doge. So 76% approve of it. 10% of people don't like the immigration policy. That means 90% do. So I don't know how this is a bad thing, but the way they tried to spin it was this is a really bad thing. And that was the cause of all these uprisings and people showing up to town hall meetings and complaining and raising hell. But it's all manufactured. All of it is manufactured. Here's the DNC chair, Ken Martin, openly admits that they're manufacturing outrage at GOP town halls with an astroturfing army of planted leftist activists. They're unhinged. He's saying they're sending activists into the GOP town halls to stir up the shit there. Shout out to Wolves and Financing for this video. It's a great video that I'm going to share with you. Just listen to what the man has to say.
Something happened this month that I want to make sure that people do not miss. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social this document. It is a 32-page document containing all the latest information about what has been exposed about fraud in the 2020 election. I need to start this video with a disclaimer. YouTube policy does not allow you to say in videos that the certified results of elections were wrong. So, in keeping with this policy, I will not be saying in this video whether Donald Trump did or did not win the 2020 election. Instead, I'm going to be laying out all the facts, and I'll let you decide for yourselves. What I want you to do is watch this video all the way to the end and then leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. Do you think the 2020 election was stolen? Let me know in the comments below. It's important to understand the context of President Trump's post. He is currently facing a criminal RICO trial in Fulton County, Georgia, because he questioned the results of the 2020 election. The case is based on a bizarre legal theory that Donald Trump knew that he lost the election, but lied about it and committed fraud by trying to convince everyone that he actually won. So the key question in the case was whether Donald Trump was lying when he claimed he won the 2020 election. The district attorney bringing the case against Donald Trump is Fani Willis. It was revealed in a court filing this week that Fani Willis has been sleeping with the special prosecutor she hired to handle the case against Trump. The special prosecutor is named Nathan Wade, and he has never filed a RICO case. Fani Willis has paid Nathan Wade more than $650,000 while they were sleeping together. Fani Willis has other attorneys working in her office with experience in RICO cases. Why in the world would she pay someone $650,000 who has no experience? It turns out they would then use the money to pay for trips to places like the Caribbean. This looks like obvious corruption, and there is currently a motion filed to dismiss. Let's go back to when the case was first filed. When President Trump was first arrested by Fani Willis in August, he announced that he was going to release a 100-page report containing evidence of fraud in the 2020 election that would prove the election was stolen. He claimed it was a conclusive report and that all charges should be dropped against me and others. Now, at the time, he never released that report, saying that his legal counsel wanted him to wait until trial. I believe this new report that was just released this month is part of the president's conclusive report. So what is in this new report? It goes through all the swing states in the 2020 election. For each state, it gives a list of bullet points with evidence of fraud in the election. Each one of the bullet points comes with citations to sources backing up these claims. This is important to understand. These are not just random statements of fact. The bullet points are backed up by detailed investigations, which you can then read to get even more information. Now, I'm not going to go through all the information in this report because there is a lot. I'm going to review some of the more shocking highlights. Here's a list of all the swing states with the vote differences. Each of these states was called for Joe Biden, some by very narrow margins. Donald Trump only needed to win 3 of these states, and he would have won the election. The report argues that Donald Trump actually won all of these 5 states: Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan. Let's start with Georgia. In my opinion, this is the most obvious case of fraud. It was reported that Trump lost Georgia by 11,779 votes. In Fulton County, we have video evidence of a poll worker named Ruby Freeman running the same stack of ballots through the counting machines multiple times. Ironically, Ruby Freeman was later given the Presidential Citizens Medal by Joe Biden for her work during the 2020 election. Ruby Freeman has sued Rudy Giuliani for defamation in a Washington, D.C. court. And last month, a mostly Democrat jury awarded Ruby Freeman a $150 million verdict against Rudy Giuliani. In the complaint, Ruby Freeman explains that she did not like that Rudy Giuliani talked about the video of her and that Rudy Giuliani falsely accused her of counting the same ballots multiple times, among other things. She claims that since the election results were certified as correct, that any statement made by Rudy Giuliani is false. Rudy Giuliani was not allowed during the trial to submit one piece of evidence to the court. Now, can someone please explain this to me? How can there be a fair trial if the judge does not allow the defense to present any evidence? That doesn't seem very fair to me. There are some other unusual things about this case. How is this case being tried in Washington, D.C.? Ruby Freeman is in Fulton County, Georgia. Rudy Giuliani's comments were that she engaged in election fraud in Fulton County, Georgia. Why is this in Washington, D.C.? In the complaint, Ruby Freeman explains that Rudy Giuliani's comments were broadcast over the OAN news channel, which has an office in Washington, D.C. Rudy Giuliani also worked in Washington, D.C. as Donald Trump's lawyer. So for that reason, the case went to trial in Washington, D.C. in front of a mostly Democrat jury. Rudy Giuliani has already said that he plans to appeal the verdict. It should be noted that Ruby Freeman's complaint states that this video does not show her committing illegal ballot counting. But we can see with our own eyes that she counts the same stack of ballots multiple times. What should we choose to believe? Her own statement or the video that we can see with our own eyes? What do you think? The problem with Ruby Freeman's statements is that the evidence provides a lot of doubt. In the report from President Trump, it states, Fulton County certified 59,143 in-person votes on Election Day, despite the fact that only 14,152 people had voted as of 5 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020. Evidence suggests the in-person vote total on Election Day was inflated by approximately 37,000 votes. Somehow, a whole lot of votes came out of nowhere from people who did not exist. Could this have come from poll workers counting the same ballots multiple times? Remember that the vote difference in Georgia was only 11,779 votes, and we are talking about a potential 37,000 fake ballots. Another issue in Georgia was the mail-in ballots. It's much easier to cheat with mail-in ballots because anyone can drop it off in the mail. You are relying on the people counting the votes, like Ruby Freeman, to do the honest thing and verify that the ballot is accurate before they count it. Well, it turns out that in Georgia, likely 67,284 votes were cast from voters with invalid residency. These were people who did not actually live in Georgia, but had their vote counted anyway. Remember, the vote difference in Georgia was only 11,779 votes, and just this issue alone would be 67,284 illegal votes. There are many more bullet points about issues in the Georgia elections, but I think you get the point. There is a lot of evidence of election fraud in Georgia, specifically in Fulton County. So it is odd that Fulton County is the place that is criminally prosecuting Donald Trump for asking questions about the election. It also seems like Fani Willis is attempting to cover something up. The next state is Wisconsin. The vote difference was 20,682 votes. Wisconsin is interesting because they instituted a sweeping new election policy that because of COVID, anyone could request indefinitely confined status. That meant that you were too sick to leave the house and were granted an exception that you could vote by mail without having to show your ID. This resulted in 220,404 votes cast from individuals who were exempted from showing voter ID. That would be incredibly easy to cheat if you never had to show an ID. We are talking about a vote difference of 20,682 votes, and 220,404 votes were cast without an ID. This problem really shows itself when we look at nursing homes. Nursing homes in Milwaukee, Dane, and Racine counties had 100% turnout. So you're telling me that 100% of people in nursing homes voted? Some people in nursing homes are nearing death. So even people who were literally on their deathbeds got up and voted. Something just doesn't sound right to me about that. In one example, Meryl Barrett, who was 104 years old and did not recognize her own children, had a ballot cast in her name in the 2020 presidential election. Okay, now, how obvious do we have to get that some funny business is going on? Again, there are many more bullet points about issues in Wisconsin, but I think you get the point. The next state is Pennsylvania. The vote difference in Pennsylvania was 80,555 votes. Now, that sounds like a lot until you find out that There were 121,240 more votes than voters. Pennsylvania uses a voting system called SURE, the statewide uniform registry of electors. They were never able to reconcile the number of votes that were counted with the number of people who were registered to vote. So the vote difference was 80,555 votes, and there were 121,240 more votes than voters. This is another example where there are many more bullet points in the report, but this one fact alone raises a lot of questions for me. The next state is Arizona. This is the closest vote margin with only 10,457 votes. Arizona did some of the most blatantly illegal things. I don't know if you remember this, but Arizona took a really long time to count their ballots. The election took place on November 3rd. Well, they didn't finish counting the ballots until November 30th. Well, it turns out they were accepting and counting ballots after the election day. These were illegal votes. Here's a quote from the report. Maricopa County accepted 20,500 mail-in ballots after Election Day. By law, ballots must be received no later than 7 p.m. on Election Day, which was November 3rd. So the election was over, the deadline was passed, and they were still receiving and counting ballots days after the election was over. These are illegal votes. The vote margin was 10,457 votes. This one example accounts for 20,500 ballots. What makes matters worse is that the Maricopa County Elections Department withheld this information from public records requests for 7 months after the elections. No one knew this was going on until it was too late to protest the election. This looks a lot like cheating. Also, just like in the other states, it looks like some of the votes were completely made up. 2 precincts in Pima County had over 100% turnout for mail-in ballots. Can someone in the comments please explain to me how this can happen? Because I'm really having a hard time understanding this. How is it possible to have more than 100% of people vote? How is that possible? What is even more suspicious is the Arizona Secretary of State during the 2020 election was someone named Katie Hobbs. She is the person responsible for running the election. It turns out, 2 years later, she somehow became the governor of Arizona. In 2022, she ran against Kari Lake. Katie Hobbs miraculously won against all polling predictions, and Katie Hobbs certified her own election count, naming herself the winner. Katie Hobbs' election is still being contested in the courts. With Arizona, there are many more bullet points in President Trump's report, but I think you get the point. The next state is Michigan. The vote difference is 151,188 votes. Now, this is the largest vote difference out of the swing states, and it sounds like a lot until you find out that Michigan has 271,566 more votes than the number of voters listed in its qualified voter file, more than 1.5 times the election margin. Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? Not only that, Michigan is a state where we have video of ballots being delivered in a van at 3:30 a.m. past the 8 p.m. deadline. This was 50 boxes of ballots, each containing thousands of ballots. How can they count ballots that were received after the deadline? When we look at the ballot counts, we can see the spike that came from the suspicious ballots. Michigan was also the state where we now know there was a police investigation of a company called GBI Strategies. The police raided a GBI Strategies office to find thousands of fraudulent voter registrations. The forms were in the same handwriting and used fake addresses. GBI Strategies was funded by a super PAC called Black PAC, which paid the firm $11,254,919 to register voters for Joe Biden in 2020. These people were not only under investigation for cheating during the election, they were making an awful lot of money doing it. Again, there are many more bullet points in the report, but I think you get the point. So that was the report that was posted by President Trump going through the 5 swing states in the 2020 election. Again, I'm not going to say whether the election was or was not stolen. I want you to decide. What do you think? Was the 2020 election stolen? Let me know in the comments down below.
The point of the video was to get you to hear some of the evidence that shows you that there were some inconsistencies in what was going on voting-wise. They gave Trump, as well as his supporters, reason to feel like the election was rigged. The other part he said was the insurrection. Now, I was there on January the 6th at the Elliptis Park. I was like 40 yards away from Trump. I heard his speech. He never told the people to go down there and be violent. He told everybody to be peaceful, respect law and order, go down there and make sure your voices are heard. Sorry for the no sound. There was no sound given at the time. But as you can see, the police officers on the bottom screen have the people up above stopped. You'll see right here coming up soon, the police move out of the way and allow the non-violent protesters to come in. There's no violence, there's no fighting, there's no pushing. They're just standing there wanting to come past the police officers who are on the screen down below. And that's what happens. The police officers will start letting them come in. See, does there look like any resistance? Do they look like they're fighting hostile protesters? They were yelling a lot, but that was it. Those 4 police officers right there were enough to keep the protesters from coming in. As a matter of fact, they had them stopped right at the door and then moved out of the way to let them in. These are not violent protesters. They're not doing anything that's violent. Now, I'm not saying there was no violence. There was violence there. There's agitators, provocateurs. Now look at this, a long line of people going through that door you just saw. This is the line from the outside. What gets me is right over to the side over there are tons of police officers standing there watching these guys walk in. If they wanted to stop these people from entering the Capitol, they could have done it. Look at, there's a cop. The cop telling them, come on, let's go.
Oh my God.
See? Telling the protesters to come in. So they didn't breach no gates. They were let in. He's waving them over. Here, the cops are negotiating with these guys.
The police here are willing to work with us and cooperate peacefully, like our First Amendment allows. Gather more Americans under the condition that they will come and gather peacefully to discuss what.
Now, if what this guy was saying was not true, the cop behind him would have been shaking his head no or doing something to deny that.
One other or the other. You need a show. You understand? To show us no attacking, no assault, remain calm.
We're not going to assault. We're going to be heard. Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This has to be peaceful. We have the right to peacefully assemble.
Uses weapons. Claire McCaskill, you know the Senate well. I assume you've.
Now, I remember listening to the news when this happened, and they were trying so hard to sell to the public that these people were violent protesters. Do these people look like we saw during the Summer of Love with the BLM riots? No.
And our what
flag
looks
in
like
Statuary Hall. Now that is the area
is that
by
the Walt
which...
Whitman camera that's capturing those? I believe.
No.
Whitman statue.
I'm not sure whether that's the Walt Whitman camera, but what that is the area where the senators process to go into the House for joint sessions. So it is through there that they walk.
Unbelievable.
Every time they go into the office.
We are televising the breach.
Listen,
by the way.
in order to get to the Capitol, I mean, the Capitol is a free place to go. You are allowed to go to the Capitol. But you got to go through metal detectors. You got to go through security. And when you breach that, you haven't gone through security. And you got to imagine that is making a lot of the Capitol Police and other folks inside the Capitol right now very, very uncomfortable and very nervous.
I mean, the electoral vote mahogany boxes were walked through that Statuary Hall, right through there. These are people you can't get through with a hairbrush that's metal. How do they get through with a flagpole through the metal detectors?
This is like watching some scene from a bad movie.
I worked for years in that building, and
it's unbelievable. Garrett Hake you have some new information for us. Sorry, Katie, didn't mean to cut you off, but I think Garrett.
I'm just watching this now, and just to put it in a context of how extraordinary it is, in Statuary Hall, at the left of your screen, that door there is a position you sometimes see us go live from with that big statue of Will Rogers over our shoulders. That's maybe 20 yards off of the House floor, if that. And there is nothing between these protesters and the floor of the United States House except about 20 yards of marble hallway and one big door.
Does it look like an insurrection?
To put another finer point on it, you know, last time I remember big protests in the Capitol complex was around the Kavanaugh hearings. Those protests were confined to the outer office buildings.
Once again, there's enough police officers there to stop the protesters. They're just standing to the side and allowing them to come by. Here they have a protester arrested, but then the police officer uncuffs him. This is why we think there was a Fed that got uncuffed. Gives a fist bump to his buddy there to the side. Two police officers holding off all those people. There's no violence. Nobody's pushing.
At this point, just 3 at a time. We're not quite sure why.
The police officers saying they're only going to let them in 3 at a time. So the police officers are allowing them to come in.
Taking a little bit of time to get people
See any violence? That look like an insurrection to you? The face of the so-called insurrection.
You guys patriots. Look at this guy. He's got covered in
QAnon shaman.
You good, sir? Do you need medical attention?
That guy got shot in the face.
All right. I got shot in the face.
So that's the Senate floor. Do you see a lot of protesters tearing that place up? It looked like an insurrection.
Chance I could get you guys to leave the Senate wing. We will. I've been making sure they ain't disrespecting the place.
Okay, just want to let you guys know this is like the sacredest place.
I know.
So here you can see some Antifa members are breaking the windows, trying to break in. People are saying no, no. Some people are cheering them on. If you look down here to the right, there's a guy in the gray with the stick. He's kind of blocking people there a little bit. The guy in the green over here, kind of blocking people from stopping these guys. Not a major effort, but they're definitely standing in the way. See the Trump supporters standing in their way, they come over to stop them. And they start fighting with them. See? There's a lady there. She's standing in front of the window. There come more people to stop them. That's all Trump supporters. Look how many are there. If they wanted the insurrection, it would have been done. So instead, you see Trump supporters stopping them from breaking the window. Not what you hear about in the news, do you? See the guy up there breaking a window? A Trump supporter will come and stop him. See, look at.
Trump supporters take down the man breaking the window. The man is with Antifa.
We are under attack, not by these police officers necessarily, but by the deep state. Here we are in the middle of a militant, leftist, deep state, globalist operation trying to make Trump supporters look like idiots and that we're violent agitators. When truth and fact, there are people dressed up in MAGA hats and other gear that are pretending to be MAGA supporters, and they're instigating, and they're playing on the emotions of all Trump supporters. Listen to this. Listen to this. These are people that love the cops. We love the police, but if you Antifa dressed up as Trump supporters.
Right when I saw that, I was yelling to people. I was like, guys, there's guns. You don't want to go through there. Like, they were putting it like they were going to shoot. Like, not just like hold it there and run away. They were literally going to shoot to kill. The second that she climbed through the window, she got shot like right in the neck area, fell backwards. And I just remember like the sense of shock and sorrow that somebody just died and didn't not need to die because she didn't have a weapon. She wasn't being violent in any way. We just let police officers through. We weren't trying to hurt anybody at that moment in time.
What's going on, everybody? My name's John Sullivan. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. My group is Insurgents USA. We fucking about to burn this shit down. Fuck this shit. Anybody out here seeing
this guy? This is right before the January 6th protesters and the fights breaking out.
Fuck that guy.
He did this rally with BLM Antifa members.
Is in Utah, a whole bunch of white militia came out there, formed against our group. We out there strapped. We out there ready to burn that shit down. We out there to defend our fucking selves. We gotta defend ourselves now too. We do. Because power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Damn right. We got fucking rip Trump out of that office right over there. Fucking pull him out that shit. Nah, we ain't about waiting until the next election. We about to go get that motherfucker. I ain't about that shit. Because you know what time it is? I want y'all to be after me. It's time for a revolution. It's time for a revolution. It's time for a revolution. Thank you guys. I appreciate y'all. Be safe. Be blessed.
Next story comes from the Gateway Pundit, which is a very interesting website, but they did a good article on this one today. They're talking specifically about this fellow by the name of John Earl Sullivan. And this was a guy, he actually looks like this, who was a part of the Capitol Hill riots. Remember, he was sort of dressed up in Trump gear, and I think this was one of his mugshots, and this is what he put on, and they were there. And a lot of the groups are disavowing this guy now. People are trying to figure out who is he a part of. Is he part of Antifa? Is he part of BLM? But apparently, according to the Gateway Pundit and one of their reporters, they say he's an insurgents leader. He was arrested in Utah, and we talked about his case after the U.S. Capitol riots. As previously reported by Antifa protester, he was caught on video posing as a Trump supporter during the rioting at the Capitol on January 6th.
He said he is part of the insurgents group from Utah. So who are the insurgents? Is the Antifa insurgent leader.
And so we're going to go through some of this article. They're basically pulling from other websites, but they had the documents. So I got the documents from them, so I wanted to give them credit for this. And here is what the Gateway Pundit says. Footage obtained by the Gateway Pundit from militant Black Lives Matter and Antifa activist John Sullivan's Discord server shows so-called civil rights activists reveling inside the U.S. Capitol as he damaged federal property. He has maintained in multiple interviews that he regularly attends protests only to record what's going on, but did not actively partake in the insurgents in Washington. That's a lie. He's the leader of the Utah Antifa BLM movement, and he has previously been arrested.
His group's called the Antifa Insurgents Group. Up there it says he did damage to the property, so he definitely was part of the insurgency.
Organized an Antifa insurgents rally on January 6th at the Washington Monument at 11 a.m. Before they stormed the Capitol, the mainstream media refuses to report these facts. On Tuesday, political reporter Kyle Cheney reported that John Sullivan was paid $35,000 from both CNN and NBC for his footage inside the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. And so Kyle Cheney then, he says, these are the invoices filed with the court today. And you'll look here, you'll see this document filed yesterday on February 16th, page 2 of 4. It is a non-exclusive license agreement. The licensor is John Sullivan, so he's the one who has the video footage that he wants to make available. He says this agreement is entered on January 6th, so the same day that it happened, between the licensor, which is John Sullivan, and the cable news network, or CNN. CNN is entering into a contract with an insurrectionist, allegedly, right? Grant of rights for $35,000, the receipt and sufficiency of which are hereby acknowledged. Here's what they're going to be getting. Quote, the eyewitness video of the shooting at Capitol Hill on 1/6/2021, collectively known as the materials. They can do whatever they want with those things, and they're granted usage rights starting on January 6. Goes further, licensor represents, warrants to CNN that they've got full legal right, power. In other words, John Earl Sullivan has the ability to transfer this stuff, and he's doing so, signed off on here by John Sullivan, governed by the laws of the state of Georgia. All right. They're going to hold harmless CNN. So CNN paid $35,000 for his footage. NBC did too. Here's NBC's. NBC Universal says this is another one filed. So an ACH payment has been initiated from NBC UACH notification at NBCUni.com. So notification of an ACH deposit. It's a bank transfer. It's a wire transfer, right? It says the vendor ID. We got John Earl Sullivan. We got the last 4 digits of his bank account number. Guess what? Another $35,000. NBC Universal invoice date $35,000. Another $35,000. Guy made $70,000 from his footage, and NBC and CNN paid him $35 a pop for that. Is that curious? Is that just me? Am I just curious about this? Taylor Hanson, a Gateway Pundit contributor who was also at the Capitol Hill protest. Taylor is an actual videographer and reporter, unlike John Sullivan, who is an organizer. Taylor told us, quote, this raises serious red flags. Taylor told us that the average beat reporter and videographer makes $300 to $1,000 for coverage from an event like the U.S. Capitol riots. Sullivan made $35,000 for his coverage. He said, with over 6 months of experience as an independent journalist, which actually isn't that much, right? I have captured some of the most viewed and circulated media content on the internet. I have never made over $1,000 on an individual video. The highest I've ever seen a news source pay for breaking news footage is $3,000. John Sullivan being paid $35,000 by CNN and NBC for one event is criminal, he said. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. An average paid journalist out of Utah makes $3,000 a month, not $75,000 in a matter of days. Well, that doesn't matter. Let's not forget that John has always been an Antifa and BLM organizer. He was never reported in journalistic capacity. Even while reporting, he's seen breaking a window, telling people he has a knife to get in front of the crowded hallway, and he's heard saying, let's burn this S down, which we've covered. We talked about John. We talked about his whole case. I think we went through his entire arrest warrant and all of the original charging documents. John Sullivan has never been a journalist. He's a vowed BLM supporter. There's something nefarious going on here. I intend to find out what it is. So, I'm not a journalist either, but that sounds like a pretty nice payday, right? $75,000. Certainly he can use that to afford a good defense attorney, which he is, of course, going to be needing because he is now under, I think, federal indictment.
Director Ray. Last year, you might recall, sir, our exchange regarding the FBI's involvement on January 6th and prior. I'm happy to jog your memory to quote, according to the record, I asked you, did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol on January 6th prior to the doors being opened? You responded, I quote, again, I have to be very careful of what I say. To which I said, it should be a no. Can you not tell the American people no? We did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol on January 6th. A year has passed. We sit here again a year later, we the people, still do not have a definitive answer from you or anyone else in the Biden administration regarding the FBI presence and participation in the months leading up to the November election and in the weeks and days prior to January 6th and on January 6th here in D.C. We can't get a straight answer, although we have a tremendous amount of evidence harvested and reviewed over the course of the last year, which you will see. In September, Stephen D'Artano, formerly in charge of the FBI's field office in Washington, D.C., testified to the House Judiciary Committee that he was aware the FBI informants would attend the Stop the Steal rally thrown on January 6th. You confirmed that the FBI had confidential human sources at the Stop the Steal rally on January 6th here in D.C., sir?
Congressman, as we've discussed before, I'm not going to get into where we have or have not used confidential human sources. But what I can
we'll
tell
move
you,
on.
you asked for a definitive
We'll move
answer.
on. It's my time. You said no, you're not going to answer. That's cool. We're watching.
Mr. Chairman, may I answer the question?
Your moment will come. This is my time. Earlier this year, an FBI informant who is reported to have, quote, under oath, marched to the U.S. Capitol with fellow Proud Boys members on January 6th, close quote. He said he was communicating with his FBI handler while people were entering the U.S. Capitol. Can you confirm that the FBI had that sort of engagement with your own agents embedded into the crowd on January 6th?
If you are asking whether the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and or agents, the answer is emphatically
You're saying no?
No.
You're saying no?
Not
Okay.
violence orchestrated by
move
FBI
on.
sources or agents.
Are you familiar with you know what a ghost vehicle is? Director of the FBI certainly should. You know what a ghost bus is?
A ghost bus?
Ghost bus.
I'm not sure I've used that term before.
Okay. Well, it's pretty common in law enforcement. It's a vehicle that's used for secret purposes. It's painted over. These two buses in the middle here, they were the first to arrive at Union Station on January 6th, 0500. I have all this evidence. I'm showing you a tip of this iceberg.
Mr. Chairman.
These two buses
Mr.
are
Chairman.
painted completely white.
Point of order.
Point of order. Sure.
Just run over the time.
I understand, but you'll recall that.
There's been so much appropriate concern about January 6th, what happened that day. Unfortunately, we don't know all that happened that day. There are some major questions that need to be answered. We know that the former chief of the Capitol Police testified that they got no intelligence from the FBI about potential violence on January 6th. And, you know, there were lots of stories about people that were here at the Capitol on January 6th that may have carried a Confederate flag, may have had red and MAGA or Trump, but there were Capitol Police that told me the day before, hey, we've heard there's going to be people that hate Trump that are going to be trying to blend in, and there is going to be violence, and we're concerned about it. But the chief of Capitol Police said they got no intel like that from the FBI. An article a few days ago from Revolver says unindicted co-conspirators in the January 6th cases raised disturbing questions of federal foreknowledge. It's June 14th. And I saw a friend, Tucker Carlson, covered this last night. But this is really disturbing. And this is something that I know from my time here in Congress has disturbed Democrats and Republicans alike across the aisle, because we don't like to see government agents stirring up trouble or find that there are criminal acts that would not likely have occurred had not the federal government been participating, whether they were actual agents or undercover agents or informants that were working for the federal government. But this is scary stuff. This kind of third world stuff. This is not only third world stuff, but this is like Putin kind of activity. You know, so if there were federal agents that were involved on January 6th, we really need to know what the FBI knew and when they knew it. And not only that, we need to know how much participation did any of our federal friends, either at DOJ, FBI, or any of the intel community, what kind of role were they playing? Because there's information that came out about the effort to kidnap the Michigan governor, and there were federal agents. So it's been said there were federal agents that were involved in that. And it would seem if you have 14 people that are involved in a conspiracy to commit a crime, and over a third of them, including people in leadership, are federal agents or undercover agents or people that are working for a federal entity, that we've got some serious problems and we have not done adequate oversight. And it disturbs me greatly that there was not more information forthcoming from our federal law enforcement, intelligence, DOJ, than was received here on Capitol Hill, because surely if they had known the level of planning by a small group to actually commit violence and break into our U.S. Capitol, they would have been better prepared. And I know some of us have had extreme differences with the speaker, but I just feel sure if she had known the level of violence that was being talked about and planned and monitored by DOJ, FBI, surely she would not have allowed the Sergeant at Arms to turn down National Guard support on January the 6th. Now, this article, it pulls from documents, legal documents that have been filed by the federal government in some of these different cases. This article says it wishes to address the matter directly in the following three questions. In the year leading up to January 6 and during January 6 itself, to what extent were the three primary militia groups, Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, and the 3%ers, that the FBI, DOJ, Pentagon, and Network News have labeled most responsible for planning and executing a Capitol attack on January 6, infiltrated by agencies of the federal government or informants of said agencies? Question 2, exactly how many federal undercover agents or confidential informants were present at the Capitol or in the Capitol during the infamous siege, and what roles did they play? Merely passive informants or active instigators? And third, finally, of all of the unindicted co-conspirators referenced in the charging documents, the official federal pleadings, of those indicted for crimes on January 6, how many worked as a confidential informant or as an undercover operative for the federal government, FBI, Army intelligence, etc.? In the narrative about January 6, or if the narrative about January 6 does not conform to the questions above, the American people will never learn the most important truth about what January 6 is and what kind of country they're really living in. It turns out the federal government did, in fact, have undercover agents or confidential informants embedded within the so-called militia groups indicted for conspiring to obstruct the Senate certification on January 6. The implications would be nothing short of seismic, especially if such agents or informants enjoyed extremely senior level positions within such groups. And the thing is, like I say, they've got documentation, the federal pleadings that the United States government has filed in some of these cases that really raise serious issues. Yeah, there's no question there were radical groups there. And those three seem to be the most prominent. But from the pleadings from the Department of Justice itself, it appears that they had significant presence and participation in what went on. And they're really, we do need to see the 14,000 hours of security videos, seeing Ashley Babbitt killed by an officer standing off to the side. There were officers in front of the window, but then there were officers on the other side where Ashley was, and it appeared it was John Sullivan, a Trump hater, that told them if they will move out of the way, they won't get hurt. And the officers they moved out of the way, and these guys broke through the glass. And yet, with all of the people that the FBI has sought information on and put up pictures, and it appears they were probably wearing masks, but there's other 14,000 hours of video. These guys were around the Capitol. They didn't have their masks up at all times. But it doesn't appear that the FBI has asked for assistance in identifying those people that broke through the glass, or that were right there at least, when Ashley was shot in the neck and killed. And that normally means, if they're not asking for help in identifying somebody, that they know who they are, and maybe they're person 1, person 2, person 3, person 15 that are referred to in the pleadings of people that were working with the FBI or federal authorities of some kind. But this is very unsettling stuff. It was bad enough to have our Capitol attacked. And as a former felony judge, I would have no problem sending people to prison that broke into this Capitol, that literally broke in, or that did damage, or that stole things here. There's no place for that. And they do need to be severely punished. But were some of those people doing those things working for the FBI? Were they egged on by federal authorities? Because it sure looks like, from some of these legal documents they've filed and the masking of names and referring to them as something other than their real names, that we have a serious problem with some of the people that were involved that day that appears were either working for federal authorities or were informants for federal authorities and had leadership positions in those groups, and quite possibly, some cases probably, helped egg them on.
So no, there was no insurrection. As a matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi's daughter said as much, that it wasn't an insurrection. She said it on video. Constitutionally, Trump had a right to dispute the election results. But just like they did once he was out of office, they used lawfare against him to try to silence him, but it didn't work. The truth's going to come out here real soon. With Pam Bundy and Kash Patel now being sworn into their positions, I think a lot of evidence is going to come out that are going to shock a lot of people. but definitely the truth about what happened during the election of 2020. Anyways, I'm curious to hear for all you people who thought that Trump had done some kind of insurrection and rioters were out of control and that the 2020 election was legit. After seeing this, does this change your mind at all? Or do you still believe that the 2020 election results were in favor of Biden? Anyways, I look forward to hearing from you. I'm out.